Okay, so here we are. As you know, I just asked you to do some work with this US household expenditures data set. And you may recall that we worked with this before. We did charting with this data set where we made stacked column charts and we made a pie chart here. We're actually going to return to charts with this particular spreadsheet so that we can see how tables and charts interact. But first, we're going to follow up with the exercises I asked you to do so that we can think about the advantages of converting our data ranges, our spreadsheets, to tables. So what I asked you to do, I asked you to first convert our data range to a table. I'm just going to quickly follow along, and I'm going to do that using Control-T. Yes, we have headers. Yes, that's the right data range. Everything looks good. I'm going to change the color and go with that color that I said I liked before. And then you remember I asked you to calculate a total expenditures column, I think I said we should call it. And this is going to be the sum of all the expenditures across US households for each year. So we'll call this total expenditures. Let me see if I can spell this correctly. Excellent. We will resize that column the way we should so that we can always see that column header. And you're already going to notice that we have a new column, not just in our spreadsheet, but in our table. This column now has a filter pull down where we can sort and filter. And we see that row banding that we recognize as being associated with tables. So Excel is already thinking about this new column we added in here as part of the table. That's really interesting. Let's see what that means as we go forward here. So this is our total expenditures column. A good way to add up each expenditure category per year is to use our sum function and then grab these cells, close that out with the closing parenthesis and hit enter. And whoa, a whole bunch of stuff happened there. Not only did we calculate the sum for 1940, but Excel auto-completed, it auto-filled that calculated column all the way down. Same formula, same function, same equation for each year here. This is a huge advantage of tables. We have a column here, and Excel is correctly assuming that if we want something in a column for one row, we want the same thing for every row when we're using a calculated value like the sum total. So Excel auto-filled that for us very quickly. Imagine how efficient this would be if we had a very large data set that we're working with. A big, big advantage of using tables in Excel. Something else to notice here, just in terms of how tables work in Excel, is we're no longer using cell references in our equations. You can see here that Excel is now referring to the different cells as the cell within the column name. This is a huge advantage as we add in new data into Excel. And that's the next step that I asked you to do. I'm going to pause here and I'm going to pull up a different spreadsheet so I can show you how charts interact with tables. And then we'll catch up on what happened when you entered in the data for 1965 on US expenditures. So we're back here again with our US expenditures spreadsheet, which is now a table. And as you see, I've included the stacked column chart that we used with the spreadsheet before. And so as a reminder, we have each year, and then our colors are showing within each year the magnitude of the different expenditures for our different spending categories, personal care, medical and health, and so on. Now what we're doing is we're adding in a new row of data for 1965, which was not included in our original data set. We're going to look for two different things here. We're going to look for what happens with our table. We're going to look for what happens with our chart, and that'll be new to you. I already have the data copied it into my clipboard, and so I'm just going to use Control-V and paste that in. And once again, we see several changes take place here. So first of all, here's our new data for 1965. And what we see is that is already automatically included in our data table. You can see this green border, this green boundary, and this little signifier right here is telling us the range of our data table. We can actually adjust that, but we want that new row of data included in our table, so we're going to leave it how it is. The new total expenditures column updated with a new value for 1965. That's fantastic. And presumably all of these new values are included in the table and any calculations that would use those values. We can confirm this by looking down at our chart. This, again, is a huge advantage of using tables. Our chart included 1965, brand new data that were not in this table when we originally created this chart, but Excel added in that new category for us. So it's automatically incorporating all of our new data into anything that we created with those data in the first place. So this is a really, really big advantage. Let's summarize for a minute here. What does it mean when we convert a data range or a spreadsheet to a table? It means we can easily have calculated values in new columns fill all the way down, and those new columns, as you know, are going to be incorporated in the table. It means when we add a new row of data, which is often a new record of data, that data is automatically going to be incorporated into any calculated value and any chart or plot that we've created with the data. So again, this is a huge advantage over working with traditional spreadsheets, where every time we entered in new data, we would have to update the data range that we're using for our calculated values and we're using in our charts. Using tables, all of that is automatic, and it helps us keep our data up to date, and any reports we create with our data will be up to date as well. We're going to move on and see a few other things we get out of using tables when we're working with larger spreadsheets, but hopefully you're starting to see why this is a really powerful thing to do in Excel.